What we're going to be going over is basically the offer, listing, what are the documents that you need, but equally important, what I want to make sure that you understand is, what is the cycle of it? So you guys have a flow chart, if you will, in your mind, where do you start and where do you finish, okay? So obviously, you guys all know pretty much what's an offer, right? Okay, so that's the beginning of it. What's the next thing? What comes along? What other documents come along in a transaction? Well, no. Let's say that we're going to escrow. What are the documents you're going to have? The first thing you have is an offer. The next item you have is normally a counteroffer. You either have an acceptance or a counter, right? So, right. Well, you could have an addendum, but that's what I wanted to express, and I want to make sure that everybody knows the difference. So, you have an offer. What's the next step in the offer? You have a counteroffer or an acceptance. Correct, right? So you have a counter. Counter or acceptance. Here's where I believe a lot of us go wrong. See, when you go present an offer, you don't instruct the client, or a lot of the times the clients are really confused. Clients don't know what to do. So it's up to you to sit down and tell the clients, okay folks, here's the steps that we're going to go through, right? Have you guys ever gone to a doctor's office and you tell the doctor, hey listen, I have this problem, and the doctor's checking you out, but the doctor doesn't really tell you what he's doing or what she's doing, right? I went to a doctor and the doctor says, look, this is what I'm going to do. You're telling me that you have an issue with coffee, and I'm going to check out your lungs right now, and I'm going to see if they're clear. And because of that, I'm going to do this, do that, do that. A lot of people come on in, and they go to the client and say, here, I have an offer for you. What do you think? Client doesn't know. Client doesn't know. You really, literally have three options right now. You have option number one, you counter. Option number two, you accept. Or option number three is do nothing. Where the client really doesn't know what to do. So what basically happens is you walk in, you present the offer, but you don't instruct the client what's the next step. So literally you have a counter, you have an acceptance, or you do nothing. Okay. As a matter of fact, then that's 4 steps. You reject or nothing. Can you do nothing? Can you sit there and do nothing? Can you tell the client, say, nah, why don't we hold off a little? Can the client do that? Yes. Tell me where in the documents, tell me where it says that the buyer, that the seller must answer you. Nowhere. Nowhere. You have a solicitation. You have a solicitation to offer. What is your solicitation to offer? Listing agreement. Okay? So you as an agent, let me put it around, let me twist it around. You as an agent have a listing. An offer comes in, the seller does nothing. Does not counter, does not reject, does not accept. Full price. You as an agent, what's your next move? Your listing agent.
Well, it's only courteous to let the people that put an offer.
Yeah, he doesn't have to. He doesn't have to. You as an agent, what's your next move?
Advise.
Advise. Who said advice? Advise. You as an agent, it's your job to advise the client of the ramifications they're going to have. I am the listing agent. I represent an offer. This is my language to them, seller. Right now we have a couple of options. Number one is, if the offer seems to your liking, we could accept it. If the offer is listed and you have a 30-day escrow and you need 60-day, we're going to counter them. Or if you don't feel comfortable and you're not going to accept it, and you feel like, oh my goodness, now I don't want to sell, my son doesn't want to move, he wants to graduate in the area and stay here. Thank you very much, seller. But now at the moment you may have a liability with my broker, because we brought you an offer just like the way you want it.
What kind of liability?
We'll go into that in a little bit, which I will explain. I don't want to lose track of where we're going, but hold that thought. I'll explain to you. Offered, counter, accepted, rejected, nothing, right? So let's say either one, we go to the next thing. What's the next thing? It's acceptance. Right? Okay. Acceptance. Okay. Go ahead. Right, that's what we're going to go into when we fill it out. Okay, the acceptance. Okay. So you accept it. You have offer, you have counter offer. Everybody signs, and you go to escrow, right? Wrong. Wrong. You don't have no communication. Well, see, that's where a lot of people, technically that's where we're going wrong, a lot of us. See, what basically happens is, let's go over the example real quick. Okay, I'm the listing agent. Esther has an offer. Esther brings me an offer. Thank you. We accept it, right? We're not even giving a counter. We're accepting. We give it back to Esther. Great. Let's go open escrow. Right? And Esther said, I did my job. I did what I was supposed to do. We opened escrow. Another offer comes in. You accept that offer. They accept it, and they communicate back to me that it got done. That's a contract that's been ratified. You never communicated back to me that you accepted, that you received my acceptance. In the Department of Real Estate, when you went to go take your course and you took your exam, what was one of the biggest questions, one of the biggest issues that they told you? Communicate back to the listing agent of acceptance. Esther never communicated back to me that it was accepted. So literally, we don't have a contract. I mean, if the escrow opened and the escrow instructions got signed, the judge will say, forget your acceptance. You got the contract, you got the escrow instructions, and your client signed it. But literally, technically, if I accept something else, she's out of the water.
So you're telling me that if I receive by the listing agent the acceptance of the contract, I have to respond, okay, I'll take it?
Take a look, everybody take a look at page 8. Take a look at the very bottom where it says confirmation of acceptance. Page 8, double-sided. Item 30, right below, confirmation of acceptance. You see that? That's it.
Get this back to the listing agent.
Exactly. In other words, Esther turns around, initials it, signs it, sends it back to me. Now we got a deal. So you guys are not communicating back and forth. Okay? Go ahead.
When I started in the 80s, it was a lot of communication. We have to, because we don't have
Email, fax.
cell phone, so
Cell phone.
everything. Many things, so it was fantastic because sometimes I remember I go at 10 o'clock at night, in the morning, Saturday, Sunday, we have to go, and the offer were presented. I remember the listing and the selling together with the buyer and the seller.
Yeah.
It was, and we were lost a lot of communication with the technology.
True.
But
However,
we have to go with the time.
but to defend that issue, if you come across somebody like Paul, you don't lose communication.
No.
I mean, Paul is just incredible with his email text. I mean, but I do agree with you. Most people don't have that drive, that tenacity.
No, I know. And then we grow up in that stage in life, and we are a little,
Right.
not mad, because we
Sure.
just got things here,
Sure.
communication,
Sure.
all the time. Doesn't matter.
What we're failing to is communicate it back to the listing agent, back to the agent.
I make one of my better offers and selling and everything at one time city in a painting, things or in the trash, or I do it. And I remember in Alameda, an Olympic, in my
Yes. Great job. Great job.
No, it's memories.
Sure.
Okay, so Esther communicates it back to you, and what's her proof that she communicated back to you to keep you from accepting someone else's offer?
It's right here. The initials.
Right.
Right there.
But do you, you keep some sort of a log, like an
Sure.
email?
Well, no. I mean,
I
just the
received
date
it.
and time. See, everything goes by date and time. See, I give it back to her. She received it. She gave it back to me. Now she communicated back to me that she told her clients is done. Okay? Because see, what basically starts happening is that without us wanting to, we really are dealing with a lot of subcontractors, if you will. Who's your escrow company? It's a subcontractor. Who's your title company? Subcontractor. Who are you? A subcontractor. Esther's a subcontractor of me. Of me. She communicates that to me. Buyer, seller, the client approved, and it's approved. The buyer didn't approve it, the agent did, so I'm realizing that she spoke to, or I'm accepting the fact that she spoke to the buyer. Buyer, you spoke to her, you're good with this, she initialed it, send it back to me, we're done. Now you got a deal. Now you have a deal. See, sometime back, does anybody here read the books or follow the DVDs or tapes? Covey?
Yeah.
Stephen Covey?
Stephen Covey?
Yeah.
Yep.
Right? He had one statement that carried, that weighed heavy on me. Start with the end in mind. That really created quite a bit of weight with me. And what that meant to me is, think about it as every transaction is going to court. You will not make mistakes if you think like every transaction is going to court. Okay? So you have an offer, you have a counter, you have an acceptance, you reject, or you do nothing. You have an acceptance, then you communicate back confirmation of acceptance. So your communication is your confirmation of acceptance. So let's take it another step further. Offer, counteroffer comes back and forth, and then you have a confirmation of acceptance. If you look at your counter, it says the same thing.
After it is signed or the initial, so you send this copy
To me.
to
Me. Okay.
Yeah.
Esther communicated to the client that's accepted. Now we have a deal.
Are we talking about the whole contract, or are we talking just that particular?
I think that's the page.
You know, start with the end in mind. Give me all my pages. With email and scanning back and forth, it doesn't require much anymore. Back in the days with the faxes, I mean, it got ugly. You lose things, papers curl up. Your whole desk is nothing but curled papers. Not anymore. You know, it doesn't work with that. So start with the end in mind. I make sure that I cover all legal aspects, give you the whole contract. The whole contract. Okay? All right. Now,
586-1.
we open escrow, do inspections,
Yes, I faxed
and now you want to make an addendum. You want to make a change. You want to make a change in your contract. What should you use? A counteroffer? Or addendum? Why? Why?
Depending on the changes, right?
No, why? Why would you not use a counteroffer?
Yeah, the counteroffer
It's already settled.
Sure.
is in the beginning and the negotiation, the counteroffer. So I think it's in that stage that you do counteroffer.
Okay.
But the addendum is when you just have to
Change
add
the whole
something.
contract.
Okay. When you're making changes after everything's been accepted and communicated back and forth, counteroffer should never be used.
Yeah.
Should always be an addendum.
So the counter offers right at the beginning before the assessment.
Counteroffer is anything that you have prior to confirmation of acceptance. You make any changes, names, phone, I mean anything whatsoever, addendum, 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 addendum.
So what do they send a counter offer and an addendum for?
When somebody's sending you a counteroffer with an addendum, they're trying to hide something. See, again, we had an office meeting yesterday. One of the things that we talked about was that you're supposed to, if we have an appraisal is going to ask you, give me all multiple offers, right? If you have an appraisal issue. That's best practice, right? So when you give all documents, legally and technically it tells you to turn in all offers, counter offers, right? Sometimes they leave the word addendum out, so you can take the addendum out. So most of the time I found out when people write in addendum format in the counteroffer stage, one is they get lazy. Oh, I did not have enough room in my counteroffer, which is a bunch of bull. You go to counteroffer 1.1, right? You don't go to counteroffer 2, okay? So you have plenty of room. And then you don't put addendum, it's always counter. You got confirmation, then you go into addendum. And now you make the changes, okay? So you go to escrow, me and Esther are in escrow, and everything's moving along right. And you know, we're gonna change the date of closing. We're not good with October 15th anymore. It's coming to close. We want to change it to October the 20th. Okay? So what do you use? Well, we just cleared it up, an addendum, right? So Esther's running around and says, you know what? I don't have time for this. Let me call escrow. Escrow, do me a favor, do an addendum and extend it. Could that be done? Sure it can. Sure it can. Sure it can. Yeah. The escrow can make addendums. Okay. But what's a good escrow officer going to tell you? Get me the addendum. Right. See, so signed by both seller and buyer. Because see, the escrow is supposed to be doing changes only from addendum format. Okay?
And this is under the instructions under the selling it, the listing it?
Can the escrow company make the changes? Sure. Now, the escrow company is going to turn around like Sylvia Chen. What she's going to tell you, oh, go get an addendum. Go give me an addendum. What am I going to tell her? Hey, let's work with our people. You know, if you can help them out, help them out. But legally and technically, what starts a change? Your addendum. Right? Now, I've had agents call me and say, Robert, we need to change the closing date. My buyer's not ready. My buyer's not ready. Can we make an addendum? Sure, no problem. Make the addendum. Robert, can you do the addendum for me? And can you send it on over to me? I'm on the road. Can you do that? Sure you can. You can help out. You can help out. But is that supposed to be your job? No. So there's a rule. There's a rule of thumb that I want you guys to remember. The document, wherever it starts, belongs to that person, whoever started it. So does the original offer belong to the sales agent? The original offer belong to the sales agent? Yes.
Selling agent, yes.
Yes. So what does the agent, the listing agent get? A copy of it. Get it? Counteroffer that a selling agent is preparing. The original, who does it belong to? Get my point? A lot of people, now these are old school rule of thumbs, that if you apply them right now, they'll help you out. But it's kind of difficult in today's technology. Now, I did a lot of the job, a lot of my work was based upon my inventory. If I had an agent calling me and says, hey, can you please help me out? I have an addendum. And I'm running 2, a chicken without a head. And I got 10 escrows. And I'm running late to my appointment. Guess what? I'm going to tell them, sorry, buddy, you're on your own. I got to go. Right? But I have 2 escrows. And I don't want this one to tank. And I want that agent to be nice. What am I going to do? Sure, let me help you out. Right? So honestly speaking, that's the way I gauge my business. My business was based upon what can I do and how can I do to help. Okay? Now, certain people that I've met in the last 3-4 years that will go bend over backwards for you, and to me it's just a nicer way of doing business. So will I help out? Of course. Will I learn more from that? Of course. Will I go out of my way for them? Of course. Because what just goes around comes around. right? Sorry, you had a question?
Yeah, I have a question because I notice sometimes, I work with agents and I know, and they'll ask for addendums. There's times that I help them too. I'll ask escrow, and they'll just prepare it.
Yeah.
That's what I was wondering, because I know that you have your addendums in your documents as well. So when you mentioned that sometimes escrow will ask you for the addendum, that was a little confusing.
All changes start from an addendum. All changes start from the addendum of the sales agent. Can the escrow company do the addendum? Not in a CAR form, just in their escrow?
Right.
Yes. Can they help you out? Yes.
Okay, that's what I mean.
I mean, you can put an addendum, let's be honest with each other. CAR is nice, WinForms is nice, but I can go right now, go to a market, sit down with a client, hammer out a deal, and put it in writing on the back of a napkin. Can that be upheld in court? Sure. It's in writing, signed, dated. Anything that's in writing, signed and dated, could be upheld in court, as long as the real estate transaction is 1 year or more. Yes.
The form, the card form, if it's extension of time, is that an addendum?
Yes.
Okay,
It's an addendum. Yes, that's an addendum. Okay. So I want you to have a clear understanding of this. Because see, the problem is that I started in the business. One of my problems that I had is that I just didn't understand the flow of things. And once I started understanding what happened, then I put it in a flow chart. Okay, I can see the whole view now, and I see where things are all coming from. So part of this task is I wanted you guys to understand this scenario. The next thing is I want to go through this real quick, and I want to be able to isolate the issues that we've been having in our office. Number one, your offer, the very top item. Well, let's not skip these documents. Anytime you bring me an offer, what am I going to ask you for? Checkoff list. Anytime you bring me an offer, I'm going to ask you for a checkoff list. Okay? Now, Hortensia is working from Whittier. Robert, I need this offer approved. Email. Email it to me. Better yet, you know what? Robert, I'm running a little late. I'm going to send it to the agent. I'm going to BCC you. Great. BCC me with the whole offer. But add this in there. It's just easier. But let me tell you why. Why is because I'm running like a chicken without a head. And the problem is that I'll forget documents. So, how many of you have come to visit me and I'll approve it, and then Alfonso's reviewing the offer. Robert, we're missing this. Gosh. You know, and I really hate doing that. So, let's go over this. Disclosure of representation of more than one buyer and seller. What does this really stand for? Does any of you really know what this means? This form? Can anybody tell me?
You represent just the buyer, or you represent both?
Good. Go ahead, guys.
That the company
More than one
represents
client.
the one buyer and seller.
Good. Go ahead. Anybody else?
So disclosure to the buyer or seller that you're giving your representing buyer or seller.
Right. Really, it's a disclosure that you could be representing buyer or seller in your office. That's what this is really for. But the problem is that a lot of people, when you sit down and you ask the client, and you sit down and you say, write the offer here, don't they look a little like startled? Like, what is this? So when I sat down, just as I advised them, I would go through the form very quickly. Oh, okay, thank you, Robert. I appreciate that. Now, how many of you guys have had an opportunity to read it? How many of you had an opportunity, you have not read it? Shame on you. Shame on each and every one of you. Because you're in this industry and not knowing the form, it's really bad, guys. It's really bad. Go ahead.
When I explain my contracts to clients and that form comes up, I always tell them, this form, stating that you're the client, that I'm the agent, you're my client, but you're not my only client. Is that wrong?
That's exactly it. You're putting it kind of raw, but that's it. That's it.
I've let them know I'm representing other buyers, other sellers, somewhere else.
Right. As a listing agent, what this means is you're not my only seller. As a buyer's agent, you're not my only buyer. As a buyer's agent, you're not the only buyer in my office. Right? As a listing agent, you're not the only seller in my office. That's what it really stands for. But you should read it. Read it thoroughly, understand it. Because there's a couple of things in here that you guys need to be aware of. Broker, individual.
Can you please repeat what you said about being a seller agent or buyer's agent as the buyer agent?
Is it,
No, you're looking at the wrong form. That's the agency. We're talking about this one. This one. Right. A real estate broker, whether a corporation, partnership, or sole partnership broker, may represent more than one buyer or seller, provided the broker has made a disclosure and principals have given their consent. This multiple representation can occur through an individual licensed as a broker or through different associate licensees acting for the broker. That's your key factor right there. The associate's licensee may be working out of the same or different office location. Broker individually or through its associates licensees may be working with many prospective buyers at the same time. These prospective buyers may have an interest in and make offers on the same property. Some of these properties may be listed with broker and some properties may not. Broker would not limit or restrict any particular buyer from making any offer on any particular property, whether or not broker represents other buyers interested in the same property. In other words, Jimena has a buyer on my listing. Well, so does Patty as a buyer on my listing. You both were off from the same office. Do you understand the amount of liability you stand? That's what this is for. Okay, now, can any one of us tell the client, the opposing client, the other documentation or the other offer? No. It states in here that you're not allowed to. In the event dual agency, seller and buyer agree that A, broker without prior written consent of the buyer will not disclose to seller that the buyer is willing to pay a price greater than the offered price. B, broker without prior written consent to the seller will not disclose to the buyer that the seller is willing to sell property at a price less than the listing price. C, other than set forth in and above, dual agency is obligated to disclose known facts materially affecting the value or desirability of the property for both parties. Non-confidentiality of offers. Buyers advise that seller or listing agent may disclose the existence, terms, or conditions of buyer's offers unless all parties and their agents have signed a written confidentiality agreement. So in other words, you can't be telling the other person what they're willing to pay or what they're willing to accept. That's what this is really aimed for. Multiple representation predominant in the office. Now, as a listing agent, multiple representation because, you know, I'm working in Pasadena. I have multiple listings in Pasadena. Well, why, Robert, are you're spending a lot of attention on property A versus property B? Well, because I'm a broker. I have multiple clients, and your price is a little too high. Okay? Dual agency. Buyers, various sellers.
in the same listing?
Of course. Of course. Agency agreement. What does this do? What does this do? Again, I strongly recommend that you guys should all read this. You guys don't read this? Shame on you. Really, shame on you. You should be going through every page and you should be highlighting things for the client. So you know what you're doing. I would highlight it for the client. This is what this means, this is what this means, and so forth. Buyer's consent or representation, disclosure regarding real estate agency relationship, I would highlight it. This is a list of my duties as an agent representing the seller. This is a list of my duties as an agent representing the buyer. And this is a list of my duties as an agent representing both buyer and seller. And this means that I have the utmost fiduciary relationship to you. In essence, what does that mean? If you violate fiduciary relationship, what does that mean? You've violated the most sacred law of the land. Fiduciary relationship. In other words, you gave up information that you weren't supposed to. So it's a very, it has a lot of impact. At any given time, fiduciary relationship, they blame you for violating that. You better hang on to your hats. You're going to go in for a heck of a ride. So this is one of the reasons why I tell you guys, think with the end in mind. In other words, think about every transaction going to court, and you'll get yourself, and you'll be out of court a lot of the times. That's why you guys, why is Robert so difficult on this? Because of that. That's my mentality. Okay? So again, I will ask you for this. I pretty much maybe remember all of it, but most of the time, I'm human, we forget. So I'm going to ask you, but equally important is for you not to forget. Now, a lot of you guys are busy, and you'll come up with me in the offer, and you just hand me the offer. And a lot of the times, I'll review it, and most of the time, I'll tell you, hey, where's the checkoff list? It's just to juggle your mind, okay? Now, let's go over real quick on the offer. I don't want to spend too much time on this. It's a very lengthy document, and I want to move on to the listing agreement as well. Very top, the date that you're writing the offer. Number 2 is who's writing the offer. You do not have to list all parties. You could list 1 or 2 parties. In the past, you used to have to list all parties. You could just start off with 1. And in escrow, you can determine all pertinent parties. Can you use an or assignee? Why, Jimena? Why can't you not use an or assignee?
The banks don't allow it as an arm's length transaction.
Good point. Anybody else? So Gonzalez wants to buy a property, and it's Joshua Gonzalez and or assignee. What's wrong with that? His cousin is not buying it. No family member is buying it. What's wrong with that?
Can you define that?
I've done it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's wrong with that?
There's nothing wrong.
Nothing.
Okay.
Secret.
But there's nothing wrong with that because he's the buyer's agent. There's nothing wrong with that. But you bring me that as a listing agent, I'm going to give you a counter and assignee to be named prior to opening of escrow. Because an assignee means it's just that, the word, assignee. You're assigning the contract. Many people would go out there and turn around and tie up a contract, tie up a property. It's worth $300,000. They'll get an offer accepted at $200,000. They'll go to investor, hey, I just got this property in escrow. Give me 10 grand, I'll assign it to you. It's yours, buy. The guy gives him $10,000, he assigns it to him, it's gone. All you got to do is turn the contract over. I, Joshua Gonzalez, assign it to Patricia Lopez. It's yours, later, bye, give me my 10,000. Now you just went into escrow with somebody that you didn't even know. So, is there anything wrong with that? No. But as a listing agent, I'm going to give him a counter. Yes.
But there's still a deposit involved, right?
What's that?
There's still a deposit in escrow.
Oh yeah, there's still,
So
everything is assigned.
couldn't you, as a listing agent, accept it with an assignee, but buyer to forfeit their deposit?
Yeah, but again, you now remember when you presented the offer. What did they present you? FICO score, proof of cash. You know, well, you got now an assignee. You don't have none of that.
So
Where's all this stuff?
There's no upside on the listing end if they have an
At the
assignee?
listing end, I don't see it. I don't see it. I want to know who I'm dealing with in the beginning. You know, so as a buyer's agent, great, good for you. Go for it. If you can get by it, go for it. As a listing side, I wouldn't. I would give you a counter. I would give you a counter. Okay. Real property. Put the address down. Now, all of us sell here predominantly in Los Angeles County. We really don't have a problem. You know, it starts getting really difficult when you start selling land. So you use APN, or when you start selling in rural area. I used to say rural areas. You know, when you start selling vacant land, it gets really tough. But most of the time, we all have addresses. Okay? The price. Now, in win forms, you put the price. It kind of does all the numbers for you. It kind of adds it up for you on the right. Here's where I start having a little bit of problems. Close of escrow shall occur. You can put a date, or you can put the days. Now, you're trying to, what do you need to put in there to assure you're going to get an offer accepted or even looked at? Well, you want to put as little time as possible, right? So if you want to turn around and it's a standard sale, or any type of transaction, what are you going to put? I can close 30 days. This is a cash offer. I can close in 15.
10 days.
I mean, we had, you know, when the REOs were hot, some of the investors were making offers and you can close in 7 days, 5 days. You know, no contingencies. So, but at the same time, you have to go out there and you have to be careful and really do the best for your client.
Is that around 30 days on a standard and a SFR and you have 45?
It really depends upon you, because if your lender says, hey, I am all approved, all I need is 20 days, that's it. That's it. Okay? Now, confirmation. Here's where you need to state who you're representing. Financial terms, A is your initial deposit. Now, the initial deposit, the greater you can get from the clientele, the more assurance you have of a transaction. You know, but I've seen REOs open escrow on $500,000 with $2,000 properties. Asset managers don't care. They don't care. They care the price and the closing of days. But that short, with time, it's starting to change. So what do you need? What you need is you need an offer that is going to get it accepted with something that is worthwhile. Normally, what I would go out after is I would write offers at 3%. So if you're talking about $500,000, 3% is $15,000. What are they going to need for the closing cost? 3%, where there's your closing cost. Okay? Initial deposit. Now here's the key factor, guys. At any given time, you write an offer and the check is written to Real Estate Heaven, you must bring it to us and we must log it in and you must turn the check over to us at any given time. Now you have options here. You don't need to do that. You can turn around and you can take it directly to escrow. Buyer's terms. Buyer represents that the funds will be good when deposited in escrow. Initial deposit. Deposit shall be in the amount of. Buyer shall deliver deposit directly to escrow by personal check, electronic funds, or within 3 business days of acceptance. Or, if check, buyer has given the deposit by personal check. So if you write by personal check and ring to Real Estate Heaven, you must bring it to us. Now, what is the law? The law is anywhere within 24 to 48 hours. Bring it on in over to us. Why? The Department of Real Estate wants us to log that check in and make sure that it's not being deposited in nobody's account and nobody's playing with that money or commingling. If you guys remember that in our exams. Okay? Increased deposit. When do you use an increased deposit? Huh? You could. But when do you want to use an increased deposit? Well, I want to use an increased deposit when I want to show my client, hey, I'm in business. You know, I'm giving you $15,000 now. I mean, now we're talking about somebody that's going to put 10% down, right? So you have an offer at $500,000. Your 3% is $15,000, right? You want to put another 3%, another $15,000. I'll increase my price if you accept my offer. I'll increase my EMD by $15,000 in the next 10 days upon acceptance. Or upon, yeah. So that's exactly what you start using. You start showing your strength. Okay? These offer is basically, the front page is like the IRS forms. Have you guys ever seen your taxes? The first and second page explains everything else what's happening in your taxes. Well, that's what the first and second page of the offer is. It will explain the rest of the offer for you. Okay? Increased deposit. First loan amount. First loan amount is what your offer is going to be, the loan is going to be for. So, let's do some real quick numbers. I'm doing an offer at $350,000. It's conventional. 10% down, 3% the EMD. So you put the 3% EMD and you put the difference in the loan. So don't knock your head. Don't go out there and just start going crazy with the math. You're doing a $350,000. You want an FHA loan. What is your loan amount going to be? $350,000. Because your 3% is for your closing costs. Right? Okay, because in an FHA transaction, what's the loan to value on an FHA?
97.5.
What's that?
96.5.
97.5. Okay. How much do you need for normal closing costs? Normal closing cost is 3%.
96.5.
Huh?
96.5.
You can go 96, you can go 98. You know what I do is I just go to 97. 97. My closing cost is 3%, my down payment is 3%. That's it. You know, and then at the bottom it's going to give you a minus. Well, wait a minute, you're putting 15%. You know, your loan is 350, your price is 350. You know, and then it's going to give you a minus. Well, that's not up to me to worry about. Lender. I mean, from then on, you're going to get a lender's rate and term.
Right.
When you get an approval, you're going to get an addendum from escrow, lender's rate and term. And that's going to fix it all.
So you can have it wrong.
Yeah.
Okay.
But the bottom, no. It's not you can have it wrong. It's just, what is your loan amount going to be in FHA? 97.5. So you really, if you want to do the math correctly, is you deduct it from the loan amount of 97.5. But then it's not going to add up in the bottom because your EMD is 15%, or excuse me, it's 3%. So it's not going to add up. So all I'm trying to tell you is your EMD and your loan amount is two different things. Okay?
So
It's
the
two different.
3% is usually the closing cost of the purchase price.
No. 3% is the closing cost plus another 3%. That's your down payment. That's what you need. Because your loan to value on FHA is 97.
No, but my question is, the average closing cost.
3%.
3%.
It's about 3 to
of the
3.5.
purchase price.
Yes. Now you give and take a little. You give and take. Okay? All right. So you're talking about the loans. Now, if there's a second loan, you put it in there. If this is a VA FHA, you check it off. FHA. In the old days, the seller could not pay for incidental closing costs. Now the buyer pays for it. Everything's paid by the buyer. So the repairs list is all covered in here, where you guys are leaving out. This loan will be a conventional loan, or if checked, FHA, not to exceed. Now a lot of you guys leave it incorrectly. Excuse me, leave it blank. It's incorrect. You know, you could put a little star and then explain the additional terms and put at best prevailing rate. Now, you can also go in there and you can put 3.5. But what's your problem going to be at 3.5? If the client gets approved at 3.7, can he cancel on you?
Yes.
Yes. So do you want to put a loan, an interest rate? Probably not. Probably not. Okay, at best prevailing rate. This loan shall be fixed, not to exceed blank, and adjustable rate loan with initial rate not to exceed blank. Regardless of type of loan, buyer shall pay points not to exceed blank. Second loan, let's go to item 3, FHA VA. For any FHA or VA loan specified above, buyer has 17 days. This is the same thing as paragraph 14, which I will explain. Put paragraph 14 next to it. After acceptance, requires seller to pay for repairs. Seller has no obligation to pay for repairs or satisfy lender requirements unless otherwise agreed in writing. So if you have an FHA offer and you want the seller to pay for the repairs, they tell you right here they're not obligated to pay. Now, but what happens with FHA offers? Normally FHA offers will yield you or give you the most highest price. Okay? Additional terms, you put it on in there, seller pay for buyer's closing cost 3%. Okay? Let's go to the second page. Appraisal removal. I want to skip, I want to go to H. Loan application. Within 7. Now this is where a lot of people don't pay attention. This is where a lot of people don't. Loan application within 7 blank days after acceptance, buyer shall deliver to seller a letter from lender or loan broker stating based upon review of buyer's green application or credit report, buyer's pre-qualified or pre-approved the new loan. What did you have to do nowadays? Well, we didn't do it that way. You submitted a pre-qualification letter, right? Okay, but the real way is that you got 7 days to submit that. So you really don't need a pre-approval letter or pre-qualification letter. It tells you that you're going to get it in 7 days. But the way the market was is that you had multiple offers. You wanted to clean up your offer and get as less contingencies as possible. Loan contingency. Loan contingency removal. Item number 3. Be careful with this item. H3. Within 17 days after acceptance, buyer shall, as specified in paragraph 14, in writing, remove the loan contingency or cancel this agreement. Or, if checked, loan contingency shall remain in effect until the designated loans are funded. Somebody did that to me earlier on in my career. And I went after him and I said, remove your contingencies. Sure. He removed all his contingencies. Then he turned around. No, as a matter of fact, he ignored me. And then he turns around and he says, and I called him and called him and called him. And he's one of those agents that never returned my call. Right? And I was a new sheriff in town. So call him, and then finally I got to his broker. The broker also told, of course he's not returning your call. Look at your contract. Look at item H3. The loan is contingent upon until funding. Now some of you guys have been in real estate for some time. When does funding occur, guys? Normally funding occurs 1 day before it records. So you're on the hook until then. So what do? Get a counteroffer stating item 3H to be removed. Loan contingency to be removed upon 17 days of close of escrow. Excuse me, upon 17 days. Okay? Loan contingency. Appraisal. We're having a lot of issues with this. I want to breeze by real quick. Appraisal contingency. Can you have an appraisal contingency and a loan contingency? Yes. Can you have an all cash and still an appraisal contingency? Yes. That's what this paragraph is all about. Appraisal contingency and removal. This agreement, or if checked, is not contingent upon a written appraisal of the property by a licensed or certified appraiser at no less than the specified purchase price. If there is a loan contingency, buyer's removal of loan contingency shall be deemed removal of the appraisal contingency. Or if checked, buyer shall, as specified in paragraph 14b3, in writing, remove the appraisal contingency or cancel this agreement. In other words, you can have both. You can remove all contingencies. You can have an all cash, no loan contingencies, but you're going to have an issue with the appraisal contingency. So, can somebody submit an offer all cash with an appraisal contingency? Yes. Sure. Sure. Because that means that, wait a minute, do I have a loan? No. But I can hire an appraiser to tell me this property is worth it. Okay, a lot of people think that just because it's cash, you don't have an appraisal contingency. Incorrect. Okay? Wood destroying, item 4A, you have to submit your termite. A lot of people are telling me, do we have termite, but they don't submit their wood destroying pest organisms addendum. Okay? Item 4A, you should only be checking off item number 4. And buyer shall pay for natural hazard disclosure, or excuse me, seller should pay for natural hazard disclosure. What is domestic wells? Does anybody know what domestic wells is?
Yeah. The wells are where people used to get the water out?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. In certain parts, especially when it's real hillside, or you have communities with septic tanks. Septic tank is where the trash goes. The wells is where you get your water, potable water, as they call it. Okay, so that's where you get your water from. Okay? Seller by item 5 and 6 is there for you to turn around and state, well, who's going to pay for it? You're going to have buyer. You're going to have a home inspector? Sure. Who's going to pay for it? Buyer. How much? Here it is. With who? Write everything down. Okay? Item 4B, this should be seller. Seller shall pay smoke detectors installation, water heater bracing requirements by law prior to the close of escrow. The same thing with item B2. Seller should pay the cost of compliance with all any other minimum mandatory government retrofit standards. Escrow and title. I always believe, especially now with the change of times, I always believe that you have to fight for what you would like. I have a lot of agents turn around, submit offers. Sure, seller's request escrow, seller's request title. I would write offers in with my title company that gave me the free package. They gave me those postcards that helped me out with those things. You know, I would ask, no, if you're going to take the escrow, give me the title. No, if you're going to have the title, give me the escrow. Okay? Now, the reality is we have our in-house escrow. A lot of agents are going to fight you, and it's okay. You know, if you can give us the opportunity and we get the escrow, great. If we don't, there's other escrow companies that are just as good, just like, you know, anything else. So, do we want you to bring it to us? If it's available, fine. If it's not, please continue on. It's not a closed door policy here. Okay? Item 4D, you have to check if it's in the city, if you have documentary transfer tax. Let me give you an example. Compton. Compton is county. Compton is not city. So therefore, you don't have city transfer tax, which is $4.60. However, you do have city transfer tax. Excuse me, you do have county transfer tax, which is $1.10 per thousand. Okay? So write your offer properly. Know the city you're writing in. Okay? Who else lives a little bit outside of LA? Who lives in West Covina? You live in West Covina. In West Covina, it's not city. So why are you writing city transfer tax? It's only county. Right? Okay. I want to bring your attention to Page 3, and we're going to end it with there. Page 3, item 6. Okay, we have an acceptance here. We have an acceptance here on the 1st. We are going to escrow April the 1st. Based on this, we're going to go over it real quick. Seller has 7 days to get you all disclosures. So by April the 8th, seller should have given you all disclosures. What disclosures? All disclosures are here that are pertinent to your transaction. So get to know this paragraph. A lot of the things that we're leaving out right now is 1, Mellow Roos, and 2, Bond Act of 1911, I think, or 1915. Okay, so let me explain to you what's going on. April 1, you got an acceptance. So really, it doesn't start April 1, it starts April 2, right? So 7 days from April 2. So the seller has until April the 9th to get you all these disclosures. Then you have all your disclosures, then you give it back to them. Based on this offer, you have 17 days more of this. So buyer has until April 25 to return all disclosures to the seller and a loan contingency. So number 1, you return all disclosures. Sellers and buyers, you return them all. Number 2, contingency removal.
On 17 days.
Right. Because it's 17 days off of that, right? Okay. As a listing agent, April the 23rd, I was already sending him a notice to complete, notice of buyer to perform, because I wanted him to know that I was on top of it. Once you're here and you have all this, your check about 95% in the bank. But if you're not following these steps, okay, so let's say what happens. April 27th. We're good and dandy and we're set. We're good. Everything's done. All of a sudden, Esther goes to the property and Esther turns around. Esther turns around and says, hey, Robert, that second bathroom, I didn't find permits for it. Really? Okay. Seller, there's no permits for that second bathroom. You know what, Robert? I don't know. I bought it like this. Okay, so let's go check the county. No, there's nothing. We go to the city. No, there's nothing. So what do you do? What do you do? You do an addendum, a transfer disclosure addendum. And you find out and you jotted down the date you found out. But how many days does the buyer now have to accept it? Have you ever thought of that? How many days does the buyer have to say, wait a minute, you're selling me a house, 3 bedrooms, 2 baths. All the disclosures are fine. We're getting ready to go draw loan documents. Now you tell me there's no second bathroom. How many days does he have?
Another 17.
Good. Good. You're going along the right. You're going along the right highway there. You have 3 business days if you hand deliver the addendum, and you have 5 business days if you send it by calendar, by mail, for the buyer to say, no, I'm sorry, I don't want anything. So, I mean, think about this. It's April the 27th. Loan documents are coming in. You're running a business. This is your accounts receivable. You got money coming in, and I got to pay some bills. And we just learning about this? Can the buyer walk away? Heck yes. Heck yes. Can the buyer get his money back after he gave you a contingency removal? Certainly so. 100% of it. Yes.
But shouldn't the seller be liable or the listing agent? Because I mean, the buyer already spent money doing the
You could,
appraisal
but let's not go there for now. For the purpose of the documentation and us learning this, you know, We could go back and start pointing fingers and finding out, well, who went wrong here? Yes. But for the purpose of this, the bottom line is that I want you guys to understand is you have 3 days from the date of acceptance of learning, from the date of learning something new, if you hand deliver to buyer. And if you send it in the mail, they got 5 days to come back and say, nope, I don't want it. Now, do you have, how many escrows here, how many of you guys here have closed an escrow without any problems? How many of you guys closed escrows in the last 90 days without any problems? How many of you guys have had problems in most of your escrows? So what does it take? All it takes is one little nudge for the buyer to say, I'm out. I'm out. Doesn't take much. Yes.
I just want to say, Robert, that I make on my transactions a rule of thumb. On all my listings, as soon as I get it, the contract signed, go pull the permits. And my buyers, as soon as I get the offer accepted, go pull the permits too.
That's a good rule, but you also have to be careful with that. Esther, you have to be careful with that. Because see, you pull the permits, how about if the person pulling the permits doesn't give you anything?
Well, usually you don't go to the city and they hand you the envelopes. And then you just go through whatever's there and pull the permits.
I think you have a good practice. However, there is legal ramifications to everything. Remember, now you're getting you're pulling the permits and you're giving them copies. Now they're going to turn and tell you, oh, so you're a building contractor. So you know what you're reading? You know what you're describing? Be careful. You know what I mean? There's pros and cons for everything. It's good that you do that. However, be careful how you present them. Now, I'd like to cover you on that. Put a letter together and a disclosure. This is just an extra service that I do for my clients, and I just pulled all the permits for you for your records. This is not an acknowledgement. The only thing is that you're receiving a copy of this disclosure. That's all. Because now you're not reading the permits to them. Because I've seen where permits have 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, but certificate of occupancy comes back 2 bedrooms, 2 baths. So be careful. Be careful. Let me tell you why I learned this. Because asset managers, we started doing that. I'm very good at coming up with procedures and situations. When Paul and I started, we said, well, the minute we get an assignment, we're going to go down to the Department of Building and Safety and we're going to pull records. We're going to pull all permits. And, you know, I thought, wow, you know, asset manager's going to be happy. Wow, way to go. We got the copies, and without Paul knowing, I sent the copies to the asset manager. Asset manager personally called him. Who gave you the authority to go pull the permits? You just opened up a can of worms. Now we have to go and dissect these permits and explain it. It was bad. Paul just looked at me like, I mean, and I was just trying to help. Remember that? It was bad. It was bad. I got in a lot of trouble. Because now, well, what does county record say? What does this say? A lot of problems. A lot of problems. It's just, but it's a good practice. But you should say, this is just extra services that we offer. I got you copies of everything. Is everything there? You know, so just be careful with that, because it got me in trouble. I'll never forget.
But it stands to reason, though, you guys, that we don't deviate from what our jobs and our roles are. In other words, the doctor doesn't act like he's a pharmacist, does he? No, the doctor's job is to do what? To diagnose what's wrong with us, and then to go, and then he has us go to the pharmacist to go get the medication we need. I think what happens is as practitioners, we have a tendency to want to offer so many services and be so invaluable to our clients that a lot of times we step out of the shoes of what we're supposed to be doing, which is marketing and selling the properties, and we go from being the doctor to all of a sudden we're the pharmacist, to all of a sudden we're the massage therapist, to all of a sudden we're the physical therapist, to all of a sudden we're the dentist, to all of a sudden we're the babysitter. Are you guys understanding that?
Yes.
Like, and I'm sharing that with you not because I'm trying to be down on anybody, but I made the same mistake. And there have been many times where I turned into the whipping boy because as opposed to me helping them, what ended up happening was I became a jack of all trades and a master of none. So all I'm saying is is don't necessarily go out there and think that we got to put all the permits and we got to know all the things and we got to know what the client's return is going to be on their investment and how they're going to do. Listen, I stopped doing those things a long time ago because what ended up happening was those aren't my areas of expertise to begin with anyway. My job is put the property on the market and get them the most money possible, period. You guys understanding that?
Yeah.
So I'm sharing that with everybody because it's very important, because he just brought up a very good point with the pulling of the permits and the going and doing all those are fantastic services. They're fantastic services. The only problem is we're not contractors. That's not our job. You guys get that?
So how do you resolve the problem when there's a question on something's permitted or not? How do
You got to go down to, you're the buyer, you have to conduct your physical inspections and all your inspections. Yeah, I tell them go down to the city.
Because see, you go do the work, it's interpretation on things. You go do the work, it's interpretation. So I would have to say, just for the sake, so we can do this right, you need to go to the city and you need to pull the permits because you need to be good with what you're buying.
Right.
So the buyer needs to go do
Yeah,
that?
yeah. Tell the buyer.
Yeah. I don't.
Again, just mindset, guys. That's like the doctor saying, "Here's your prescription. I'm gonna I'm gonna go fill it for you, and I'm gonna get it for you, and I'm gonna come back and I'm gonna hand it to you." Would a doctor ever do that?
No.
So why are we doing it?
We don't have enough.
Because we think we're offering extra services, but that's not our job. My job isn't to do the investigations for them. If they make a profit on the sale of the home, are they going to share a percentage of that profits with me? Sorry. I'm a professional. I value my time. I know what I'm good at. I'll represent you. I'll fight for you. I'll help you get this property. That's what I'm good at.
So should we have them sign something stating that we're advising them to look for? Because if later on down the line they don't know, we don't know, and then they say, well, they, look, there's no permit.
No, well, that's what the disclosures are. No, the disclosures are for that. That's why you disclose it in the disclosures and you say.
But attention, show me in our documents where it says that it's our job to go pull permits.
Exactly.
Buyer inspection advisory.
Right.
Built into the contract.
Yeah, so be careful with that. That's what I'm saying. And when we were just getting started, I mean, Paul went to the extent of taking videotapes of the houses.
Oh.
And posting them. You remember that?
You guys think I've done everything, man.
I mean, we created services after services after services.
To impress them. To impress the client.
And then when it bought from someone else.
And then look.
I mean, it's crazy. It's crazy.
Dude.
What our job is,
profession and your time. That's all.
what our job is to get them the best price, get them the best services possible, and move on. We're not, I don't go pull permits. I stopped doing that a long time ago because of that. Okay? Okay, go ahead.
When you submit an offer, and if they're gonna accept the offer, do they have like the 3 days?
Right, I'm gonna get into that.
Okay.
Okay. Page 7 now. The rest of it, guys, I want you guys to read it thoroughly. I want to bring to your attention item 25, 26. CER is going to tell you, have your buyer sign it. If your buyer's attorney is going to say, don't sign it, because the buyer's attorneys are basically saying you're giving up right. We are basically saying, hey, sign it because we don't want to go to court. We're going to go to arbitration. It stipulates, item number 25, it stipulates the amount of total loss in advance. Real estate is made, CAR has put these forms together for, in other words, the bleeding to stop somewhere. From 1 to 4 units. Okay? Liquidation damages. If buyer fails to complete this purchase because of buyer's fault, seller shall remain as liquidating damages the deposit actually paid. If the property is a dwelling with no more than 1 to 4 units, one of which the buyer intends to occupy, the amount retained shall be no more than 3% of the purchase price. Any excess shall be returned to the buyer. Release of funds will require mutual signed release instructions from both buyer and seller. Okay, so let me ask you something. We're dealing in a $500,000 home. You get a $2,000 deposit. Okay, and then you increase it by $10,000. So you got now $12,000. How much is the buyer capable of losing? Go ahead, guys, louder.
All of it.
All of it?
3%.
3% of what?
3% of the purchase price.
The deposit.
The buyer stands to lose only their $2,000. That's it. That's it.
Well,
Because that was your initial deposit. And it stipulates they have to take you to court and lose to win the 3%. But the buyer can say, hey, take my 2,000 back. Nowadays, come on, that's a monthly payment.
So what would anybody want to put higher than that?
That's why you as an agent want to make sure that you have commitments from buyers so you get 3%. Because when it comes to the corner, when it comes to the firing line, hey buyer, stand to lose 15,000. Okay, now you're gonna have what? Now, you're there to protect your buyer. So I'm standing from two different points of view. You as a buyer's agent are there to protect your buyer. So if you don't want your buyer to stand to lose for 15,000, you don't put 15,000. I'm a listing agent. I'm protecting my seller. What am I going to tell you? I'm going to give you a counter. I want 3% deposit. Give me 15,000. You give me a full contingency removal. There's no problem with the property. All of a sudden, you know, I'm sorry. It's the wrong school district. I'm sorry. You're going to lose your 15,000. That's what I'm going to tell you. See my point? So it depends upon where you stand. As a listing agent, which predominantly I was, I would always require that. As a buyer's agent, that buyer wanted as little as money as possible.
So as a buyer's agent, wouldn't it be smart to have an initial deposit and then additional deposits?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, yes, you caught up. That's a good way of getting around it. Because now, but wait a minute, as a listing agent, I can turn around and I can come back and say, great, thank you very much for increasing your deposit. By the way, your deposit is now eligible to be lost in the 3%. And there's an addendum for that. There's a form for that that will bring your additional deposit into line with the EMD. Okay? All right. Arbitration basically means, folks, we're not going to go to court. We're going to go to an arbitrator. Normally it's 3 different. Have you guys ever gone to arbitration? Arbitration is 3 peers from your industry going to be judging on you. They're not judges. There's another broker from the area. There's 2 more brokers or 2 more agents. They're going to be sitting on the panel making a decision on your fate.
Wow.
That's arbitration. That's MLS arbitration.
That's scary.
Yeah, that is scary. So what does that tell you? Be nice to your agents. Be nice to your fellow agents. What goes around comes around. Okay, all right.
Meaning that you could go to jail or lose your license?
Sure, I'm not done yet, but go ahead.
That you could go to
No,
jail or lose
no.
your license?
Go ahead.
Want to finish that topic or no?
No, go ahead.
Okay, so the other thing that I wanted to point out real quick, since he's talking about that, is as agents, we have to really make sure that we protect ourselves and we document ourselves. And that's one of the reasons that I rely heavily on email correspondence with other agents, okay? I mean, there's a lot of agents that like to pick up the phone and they like to talk to people and they like to have those conversations with them. And there's nothing wrong with that. But I'm just saying that if you rely on email correspondence, there's never any confusion. Now, on the flip note, it can also be used against you. You know what I mean? But I'm the type of guy that I try to make sure that I stay very, very well organized. I scan everything, I document everything, I email everything. And even if after I've had a phone conversation with another agent, right after that, I'll still send them another email as per our conversation, just to document everything that takes place in the transaction. The better you get at that, the better you get at documenting all your efforts, the easier the transaction is going to be. And more importantly, you know, when you go back to your client, if your client ever says to you, well, what have you done for me, or what did you do for me, and you can go back and you can show them 700 emails between you and escrow and agents and all that stuff, and they see all that stuff, what does it do for you as a professional?
Credibility.
It's your credibility, right? So all I'm saying to you guys is, yes, we all like using the phone, and yes, text messaging is great. Those are all fantastic tools that allow us to communicate, but just do your best to document every single thing that you do, especially when you're talking about short sales, guys. You know what I mean? Because when you're dealing with short sales, everything is time sensitive. And these contracts that Rob's going over, they're very, very time sensitive. You know, we went over the 3-day expiration period and all that stuff.
No, we're going through it now.
Yes, we're going through it now. So you're going to hear about that, and he's going to talk about that really, really quick before we finish the training. But, you know, when you're talking about contracts expiring within 3 days, I actually went to arbitration, and I went and I had a client sue a seller to try to get the seller to perform, but because the contracts had expired, we lost the case. Okay? So I've been through this. I know this very, very well. It's all about how well you document yourself. So I'm going to recommend that everything you do, you try and do by email with all of the other agents that you correspond with as well. All right?
It's true. Remember the email states my transaction, I put an extra 1,000 on my buyer's pocket?
Yeah. Yeah, Jimena had a very difficult agent. that we closed on Avenue 37. Avenue 37. She was going back and forth and everything. She was trying to do everything by phone, and then I learned from Paul because I was doing everything that way too. I would call the asset manager and I would call people by phone. And Paul would say, "Stop doing that. It's going to get you in trouble." Well, it did. It got me in trouble, cost me some money. I stopped doing it, and then I passed that message on to Jimena. We had an agent that was very, very difficult. I told her, stop talking to the agent, put everything in writing. It was like changing everything from night and day the minute we started doing that. All of a sudden, we made her, and we started CCing the managers, to the extent that the managers even said, "Stop doing that. You're making her look bad." Of course we're making her look bad. We got some more money because of that. Agent turned around and said, "Well, no, you wanted the property, both properties, to be vacant." Right. She didn't counter. She didn't know that this was under rent control. She had to take the tenant out. You guys know what rent control laws are, right? 18,000 to move somebody out?
Yes.
Okay.
You have to pay? Yes.
Didn't matter to us. We got the property vacant. Okay, item page 8, very top. All contracts have an expiration date. All contracts have an expiration date. So, offer gets submitted. You have an acceptance. Page 8. You have an acceptance here on the 1st. Right? But your offer gets written on 3/15 and expires on 3/18. They go through all this, you remove all contingencies, you're on your high horse, you take them to court. The judge turns around and says, "You're out. Contract expired before you began." That's exactly what happened to us. That's exactly what happened to us. Expiration date. Now, here's another one. You get accepted, everybody's fine, you're out of dates, go back, get an addendum, clear up the dates.
And what do you do to clear out the date?
Well, you turn around and you turn around and say, offer had expired on March 18th.
Okay.
I, the buyer, extend offer to April 2nd and correlates with that date. So in other words, you match the documents. Excuse me, you don't match the documents. You get the documents and approve an extension of the dates. Okay? All right. So we have a situation right now with Richard Street in Pomona. Ramon Lopez has 30 offers. Okay? The buyer, the seller, picking the buyer. That's his buddy. Well, all other offers are rejected. Right? How do you reject an offer? Page 8. Look at item page 8 at the very bottom. Rejected offer. Now, I personally have a problem with this. You reject the offer, but you don't know what the front page said. So I have an initial there. I turn to the front of the offer. I write big bold letters, rejected, and I have the seller sign it. I'll tell you why. A year from now, the daughter of the seller on Richard is going to be reviewing the documents. So wait a minute. I have an offer here that this offer was for $200,000. The property sold for $150,000. The gentleman now passed on. Ramon Lopez, I'm going to sue you. You did bad for my father. But wait a minute. We have all these offers rejected. Cover yourself. Cover yourself. Does it require a little bit more time? Yes. Is it going to take you more time? Is it going to cost you more time? Yes. But you're not going to spend the amount of time and money that you will in court, and it's going to hurt you really bad. Okay. Now you had a question that I want to bring to your attention. Patty said, "Does MLS have any powers?" MLS can take you to court, can go to arbitration, can give a violation. And that could be recorded in the credit bureau against you. That's how much power MLS has. So you have a violation, Jimena. You avoid it. You don't pay it. They turn around and decide to take you to arbitration. You don't go. You win. It's $350. They win. They get that judgment. They're going to stick it on your credit report. MLS has that kind of power. So you go to another office, you go to another MLS, you join. Well, I've been out of the business for 3-4 years. I haven't joined any MLS. They find out, they fax that over to them, they'll make you pay it. Or they'll cut you off. MLS has a lot of power. Has a lot of power. Okay, so also too, the selling broker, the listing broker's information is left blank. We need that filled out by you guys. Now here's one crucial issue. You turn around, you open escrow. And you fax it, you email it. Well, I'm not going to have to go sit there. I would recommend you go to the escrow officer. You sit down with the escrow officer. You review the contracts with the escrow officer. Number one, you're going to become very good friends with that escrow officer. Number two, you take care of all problems up front because of all your contingencies are taken care of. All your issues are resolved. Now, I will strongly advise for you to go meet with the escrow officer, even if it's us here. Sit down with them. Let's review the file. Let's open it up. Let's go over it step by step, and the escrow officer making notes. That's the best thing for you because you will resolve all sorts of problems, all sorts of issues. But if you have an escrow officer that knows you, and you have versus an agent that's calling up and giving them orders, who do you think they're going to sign on? You. Because you took your time out to go meet them. Okay? So, if you have multiple offers, get them rejected in there. Okay? I need you to, now, I have one other document that I want to go over, and it's going to be really quick, but each and every one of you, you should be reading this offer and get to know it. It's very boring. It's the kind of thing that puts you to sleep. Okay? Read one page at a time. In 8 days you're done. But you should know it. No, that's the way I did it. I took it home and I read it. I went to a class with Gov Hutchinson from CAR, one of the best teachers around. Okay? And I took the class and he gave me the same. He's the one that said, read it, guys. It's only going to be the best if you read it. So I took his example and I just read it. It was one of the best classes around. Now, they have classes on RPA and how to fill them out. You know, it's $59. Should you pay for it? Heck yeah. Invest in you. Invest in you. Because it'll make a difference when you sit there and you know a little bit more.
Not only that, you get credit when you
Yeah. Okay. Now, real quick, Leslie, I'm sorry. Jocelyn, do you have the listings?
Yeah.
Can you hand those out? I want to go over the listing real quick. Sure. Look. Yeah. No, you can ask. You can ask. I've had escrows where I've been, they're REOs, asset managers, and then all of a sudden the appraisal comes in, well, Royal Place in Anaheim. I just closed escrow. The appraisal came in at $350, they sold it for $380. The seller accepted. Reduction in price. Over $25,000. I'm sorry, I thought it was only 15 because the buyer came up on some money.
No, talk about a standard.
Standard sale, same thing. You know, I mean, it's tough. Can I have one, please? Okay. Again, we're going through the listings, and I'm going to ask you for the checkoff list. And the checkoff list is all going to have in there. Now, who does the listings belong to?
The broker.
Okay, so why aren't you giving me phones and why aren't you giving me phone numbers and addresses? Right? You guys get listings, supply names, phone numbers, and addresses. Because I'll tell you what's happening. I have people come in, we have listings, and then I never see them again, and we can't show up, we don't know how to do show instructions. Because I don't get addresses and phone numbers for the clients. Now, I know what you guys are thinking. Well, I'm going to give you my client's name and phone number. Because that's the law. The listings don't belong to the agent. They belong to the broker. But equally important, it's not for that. It's not because I'm going to go door knock and I'm going to go kick the client. It's because the DRE wants us to be held responsible. The DRE wants to go out and be able to reach and touch somebody and say, resolve this issue. That's why. So the DRE comes in and says, get a hold of this client. I don't have an address. How do you think I'm going to look? So it's back. Okay. Same thing. We've gone over this. I'm not going to bore you with the agencies and the disclosure. However, I do want to bring to your attention is the top portion, item number 1, item number 2, and item number 3 are pretty much self-explanatory. Okay? I don't want to go in there. What I want to do is I want to go in there and I want to go over item number 4. Okay? Again, you should, I'm sorry, Esther, you don't have a copy?
Oh, we're sharing.
Got it.
Thank you.
The amount of rate of real estate commission is not fixed by law. This is set by each broker individually and may be negotiated between seller and broker. Real estate commissions include all compensations to fee to brokers. Does anybody here know what's the minimum requirement in real estate heaven?
6.
Commission.
6.
It's 5. It's 5. Now,
The minimum, you have to be.
so Caesar, you go to a listing presentation and you have 6%. And they turn around and say, well, would you do it for 4%? And you say, I'm sorry, my broker's minimum commission is 6. No. Caesar says, Robert's rule, real estate heaven, my minimum commission is 6%. That's it. And the client signs it. Is that correct? Is that correct?
Yes.
Yes, that's correct. Because he's negotiating. Company standards is we don't go lower than 5. Now why? Why do you guys think I tell you don't go lower than 5? Go ahead.
Well, one of us is the other seller, the buyer's agent, when they see the commission of 2%, they're not so inclined, they'll probably look for something higher.
Okay.
Number 2, you have to stand up for what you think you're worth.
Okay.
Number 3, you don't want one.
Everybody has to make one.
Good. Go ahead. Anything else, guys?
You need to create value to the seller for the service that you're providing.
Good. Go ahead. Anybody else?
E&O deductible.
Good. Anybody else? I'm looking for one answer.
You gotta be
Commission splits.
More money.
how much you
Good. Good point. Because if I tell you it's 3, you guys will say 3. It's a natural born. It's built in us. It's a study that's been shown on salesmanship. That if you tell a salesman that your minimum commission is 3%, you will offer 3%. So by our company standard is 5. Have we done it at 4? There's a couple of us here that can stand and can say we've done it at 4. But you have to turn around and say, I'm sorry, my office says I can only go less than this. Company standard is no less than 5. Now, is there situations that we've gone down lower? Yes. Yes, of course. But again, the only reason why I established that is because I know for a fact salesmen are salespeople. And if somebody tells you the minimum commission is 3, you're going to go to 3. Why? Because you're going to take path of least resistance. Right? If not, we will all be at the gym, right? Right? Okay. So you kind of changed it a little, is that correct? Yes. Yes. My broker, when I got started, it was the same thing with me. But I would turn around and I would tell the clients, which was true, I'm sorry, I cannot go any lower than this because any lower, I have to pay the broker. And he put it in company standards that was true. And one person, he did that to make an example. But basically, we all learned at that point, you come in lower than that, you're going to be paying from your pocket. Okay? So, now, you guys leaving item 4.2 blank. Does anybody know what a buyer protection period is?
Yes, it's usually 90 days, so after the leasing expires, if there's a buyer that acquired property when you have a leasing that belongs to you.
Exactly. Why are you guys leaving it blank? Item 4.2. Item 4.8.2. Why are you guys leaving it blank? In other words, look, if you're weak at negotiating your commission, how are you going to be at negotiating the price? Come on. Come on. Let's get a little bit of backbone. And we need to negotiate for our commission just like you do for your commission. Okay? So what I did is I would always put 180 days. However, at the end of this listing agreement, that only stands if you give a list of all the buyers to the seller.
Within 3 days.
Within 3 days from the expiration of this. How many of you guys have seen that you go out and say, here, seller, here's a list of all the buyers that have brought you? Nobody does it. So, what does it really stand to prove to put 180 days in that? So I mean, legally, technically you could put 30, you could put 60, you could put 90 days. Reasonably is 30 days. But when you close, when it's time to expire, you have to print out a list and give it over to your buyer. So how do you register a buyer? The old school, you would register a buyer by communication. We had confirmation of affirmation of confirmation. You guys remember those documents that will go back and forth registering buyers? Okay. So buyer's protection period, put 90 days. Now let me tell you why. You turn around, Jimena shows a property in Avenue 37, it's her listing, turns around, and then that buyer turns around and buys it with another agent. And you don't get the name, you don't link them. You don't link them. But you turn around and the deal closes. Oh, Mr. Smith bought it, okay. Later on you're going through. This is buyer, Mr. Smith. Oh, he bought it. He bought it. Okay, well, something's owed to you. I would go back to the agent and show him. So that's why the buyer's protection is very important. And this is why it's very important for you to register your buyer. Okay? Commissions, the dividing of the commission is only stands to prove in multi-units. You can leave it alone. You don't have to fill it out. Okay? Now, item 19, seller's initials. Now it says broker's initials here. That's not me. That's you. That's not me. That's you. I'm not to initial that. That's for you to initial. Okay? Please give me phone numbers and addresses of where they live. Something happens to you, you're out sick, and we need to show the property and we need to do something. This is the way we communicate. Now, I'm gonna go over this list real quick because I want you guys to understand why I'm asking. Seller's advisory. It's part of the listing agreement. It's just vocabulary. Comparative market analysis. Why? Because you want to show proof of what the property's worth. Seller's estimated net proceeds. I would always get this, even if I did it in handwriting. Now you can do it in the computer. But why would I do it? Well, this was just another confirmation of what I told you that I was going to get you in your pocket. Because you go to escrow, and then escrow is going to give you a net proceeds. By the way, we were closing escrows with estimated net proceeds in advance. We got together, new rule. We cannot close escrow unless you have an estimated net proceeds and then a final net proceeds signed by the seller. Okay? So the seller turns around and closes escrow. Says, wait a minute, you promised me, $109,000. Well, you only owe, you only have equity of $50,000. How could I promise you $109,000? Here's my net proceeds. I never promised you that. So this is only to back you up. It only helps you. Net proceeds.
Could escrow provide that for you
Yes.
prior to getting
Yes. Property profile. Comments for media. When we run the ads, we need your information so we can go ahead and run the ads. Okay, guys? I hope this is... I'm sorry? Any questions? We're coming to the closing. Any questions?
Just to verify, on the net proceeds, when you get the initial listing, the proceeds, and then when you accept the offer, you guys...
Yes. That's exactly. In other words, you show where you got the listing, you show where you got an offer, and then you show an estimate from escrow. And they should all correlate relatively the same. It should all be relatively the same. Okay? And if you don't know how to do a net proceeds, sit down with an escrow officer. Have them teach you. Have them teach you. But the MLS has a pretty good, package in there. Okay? I want to thank you everybody for attending. I really appreciate it. Hope it's been able to help.